Hey there. I don't know if you've heard, but there's a great new radio show on Para X. 2 hosts, 1 hour, and too much fun. Stephanie and Heidi not only talk about the latest goings-on in the supernatural worlds, they live it. They want to hear from you. They want to help you understand and guide you. And they want you to tune in. So, grab a friend or come alone to gather around that metaphysical table with Heidi and Stephanie. If you're interested in the worlds of the unseen, tune in to the Gathering Radio Show, Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern on Para X Radio.
Hi, this is Barry Fitzgerald, and I'll see you in the shadows.
Your source for everything paranormal. Para X. The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Welcome to another Monday night here on the Shadows Radio. I am Rebecca, and once again, Kara is MIA. Anyway, like I said, I put out an all-points bulletin for her last week. Nobody seems to know where she is, so I've decided that the aliens have taken her. That's our best bet right now. So we're going to go with the aliens have abducted her, and if anybody's found her, please send her home, because we miss her. And also, she left some stuff in my fridge that she needs to take home with her. All right, so it's Monday night, so let's get started. We need to get rid of some of our fun housekeeping stuff. So as always, if you want to podcast our show after the fact, you can find us on all of your major podcasting services. Just go to theshadowsradio.com. On the left-hand side, there's a big old list of all the services that we are on. If your favorite service is not there, let us know, and we will get added, because we love adding our stuff to all the things. And on top of that, find us on all the social media and keep track of us there. All right, that was it. We're quick in a nutshell. Also, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about mourning rituals and funerary rituals across different cultures. And I received an email from a listener who was a little concerned that we were not showing enough respect to the cultures while we were speaking, and that we were trying to explain the cultures in the context of our own Western opinion, I guess, for lack of a better descriptor. And I just wanted to clarify that we never meant to do that. We did not mean to imply anything. We were not putting one culture above the other in any sense. We were just basically commenting on some of the similarities and differences in some of the existing cultures, some of the ones we talked about, some of the ones that we mentioned on the side. So we apologize if anybody was offended by the way that we presented that content. It was not our intention at all. But thank you for the feedback. And as always, if you want to get in touch with us, you can find our email contact information on theshadowsradio.com. All right. So let us introduce our guest tonight, who's doing some great echoing going on there. So you guys know him from our Friday night lineup. He is the host of Strange Things Radio, co-host. I don't know, you guys co-hosts of Strange Things Radio. So welcome, James. How you doing, James?
Doing very fine. Thank you, Rebecca, for having me on your show tonight. I always enjoy listening to you guys, and I got the chance to be with me and you to chit-chat about all kinds of fun and strange. So I typically want to say strange things because that ties into my show, but tonight we're on the Shadow Radio Network. Is it a radio network or just the Shadows Radio?
Just the Shadows Radio. We're not a network.
No,
we're on a network. We are not a network.
Sounds good. So if you want to catch my show, then it's Friday nights from 10 p.m. 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. here on ParaX Radio Network, our flagship radio for our show. The co-host, James Riggs. I have Eric Williams also as my other co-host, and we do all kinds of crazy things. But Rebecca asked me to be on tonight, so I said yes, very much so. So what are we talking about tonight?
Well, first we're going to say, so James is Kara tonight. So if you feel free in the chat room, if you want to call her or call him Kara, that's cool with me. I'm all right with that. But we're going to talk a little bit. So James, kind of on the side, in addition to doing radio, also is a licensed realtor down in the state of Florida. So I thought we'd talk about like what it's like to sell, buy, live in a haunted house. I know it sounds really weird, but I found this survey that they did around Halloween time on realtor.com, and they call it their haunted real estate report. And I thought it was phenomenally fascinating, all the different stats and statistics about who, was interested in buying haunted houses and what would deter people and bring people in. So I thought James was the perfect person to talk about that. So that's what we're going to dive into tonight. All right, so let's bring it in. So, James, how long have you been living in a house? No, I'm just kidding. How long have you been working, like, the real estate market and things?
So, I've actually, it's been a short time. I've only been a realtor for about 2.5 years. But in those 2.5 years, I have seen more than I can imagine in this industry as far as people, what they expect of a home, and then more on the creepier, spookier side. A lot of times, because the world's now turned into one gigantic social media, a lot of my buyers actually find out that I do a radio show, and so they're like, "Oh my goodness!" And we start talking about it. Well, then that leads to discussions on haunted houses and all kinds of stuff like that. So it is very interesting. I've actually had a couple buyers who've asked me outright, if you find a haunted house, let us know. And I'm like, they would be willing to buy a haunted house. And I'm like, really? And then there's actually, especially around the Halloween times, you see these, realtor.com, and you have different, spookier things in the news talking about haunted houses. But there's a group of people who absolutely would buy a haunted house. I've seen there was an MLS, I think it was up in Chicago area, that in the MLS, and for you who don't know, MLS stands for the multi-listing system. This is where realtors, if you sell a house, you put in the system. When you go to Zillow or Realtor.com or Trulio or those on it, they actually take their information from these databases, these MLSs. So if you're a realtor, you put it into this database and then it spreads out. Well, in the MLS, it said this house is not haunted. Well, then people are like, oh, and people kept saying, we want it to be haunted. So then another realtor said, I have a house that is haunted. And he was getting so many hits that it was, and they, it brings a light around the, Halloween times. But it is very interesting that people are very interested. Before it was like, it's not something you would talk about. I'm not talking to other realtors and all like that. But now there's a whole subsect of people who would, I actually had a guest on my show, the House of Haas. He's connected with Nick Roth and a lot of those guys, and he's dying. He wants to find a house that's haunted. His house, he said, is not, and he's dying to find a house that's absolutely certifiable haunted. Which then gave me this great, brilliant idea for a reality show, which we know reality shows for paranormal is kind of winding down, but I've yet to see one that would be more of a real estate haunting. People that these real estate agents go find haunted houses, then get a paranormal group to go into that house that's for sale, and stay there for like 2 or 3 days and verify if it's haunted or just old pipes or what could it be. I think that would be a really cool idea for a reality show. And they go around different states finding home, and then the buyers come in and they spend the night there maybe and experience it, and then they decide yes, we're going to buy it or no. So
I think someone actually stole your idea though, because I got an email like that from a casting director recently that they were trying to do that, where they were looking for clients who are selling their home that you have investigated. I was like, wait, what? Okay. So I think somebody lifted your idea.
If they could do it, I would watch the show just for the, because every now and then I watch these reality shows with real estate, like Flip My Home, and there was a show here based out of Orlando called Zombie House, and I just laughed because I see what, it's all they make it seem so easy. Like, oh, yeah, we're going to buy a house. We're going to flip it. We're going to make all this money. And I'm like, yeah, even my short 2.5 years, I can tell you I've already seen so many. I had a house that, real sidetracked, it was a flipper. They came in. They dumped about $50,000 into it. They thought they were going to make about $50,000 in the real estate, and then the appraiser came in and said, "Oh, by the way, the house is only worth $158. We were trying to buy it for $186." And all they could do was say, "Okay, we'll sell it to you." They lost money. People don't know how fast you can lose money on a flip. But I still love the idea of the haunted part. I'll tell you, I did go into a house that I want to jump the shop. I want to give some examples. But this one wasn't the creepiest, but it was sure unique. Okay, so I had this couple, and we're going through it, and they wanted an older house because they want to kind of fix it up. In the programs that I do, don't always allow for that. But in this particular couple, they we want an older home. So we go to this house, and it's weird. It's like it's been like put together. You had a living room. It was just really oddballed out, and it was interesting because we had all these rooms that were dedicated to different divas. One was the Lucille Ball room. Was a Lucille Ball room. We had a Cher room. There was Prince Diana room, and they were like, you walked in there, and the whole room is dedicated to this particular, celebrity. We're like, okay, well, unfortunately, it belonged to a gay couple, and we're going through, the estate. We found out that the estate part, in other words, one of the people died, and so. We were in the bedroom, and we're like, man, this medicine was everywhere. And I'm like, what kind of medicine is this? And you get kind of snoopy as a realtor. You're like, what's going on here? And because you're there, you get to. And so it's like looking at, when you go to people's homes, you look into the filing, into your medicine cabinet. So it was all, unfortunately, it was all HIV drugs, and a ton of it. And they also left all the marijuana there. So that was a fun find, but it was just really, so I found out later, unfortunately, the man did die in the house. And the people were looking at it going, we just feel weird about this place. And so I called up the real estate agent and I said, this house, it's weird. And she goes, yeah, he passed away in the bedroom. I go, yeah, they have all the clothes still there. Nothing has moved. And she said, yeah, the people who were the husband, he won't go back in. He will not go back in that house. I said, well, someone needs to clean the house out. They go, no, we're selling it as is. I mean, they're seriously selling it. West Sisted. I told the lady, they go, well, you may want to remove the illegal marijuana. He's like, what? And I go, oh, yeah, there's a whole bag. He's like, oh. So it was very, it was just, the clothes were still there. It was just very, very weird. And I don't know, especially here in Florida, we get a lot of homes that and an old person has lived in, whether they passed away there or somewhere else. You get some just really creepy feelings. And I have some buyers who are more sensitive than others, and they just, I remember this one house. The house is about 100 years old. It's in Florida. It's not super. See, Florida's a fairly what we call a new state, if you want to think about it. Like they're Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's been. When did Pennsylvania? It was part of the original 13, right? Yes. One of the 13. So, and I lived up there. I lived in Philly and stuff. And so, there's homes that 200 or 300 years old. All kinds of great history. Here in Florida really didn't get going until after the 1870s or so. You start having some homes. But you really didn't get things moving until 1910, 1920, right after World War II and stuff like that. So a lot of the homes here are just about 100 years old, maybe 120, right up in there. And, in some areas, maybe parts of Miami, parts of Tampa. But outside of that, it wasn't that old. So sometimes when you see these 100-year-old homes, it's kind of neat. So it was about 100 years old, and this couple had been living there since the 50s. And it was really nice, but they didn't restore it. They just left it the way they had it. And it was quite, the people came in like, oh, this is neat. But then the lady's like, she comes to me and she goes, James, I don't know, I'm getting a weird feeling about this place. And I'm like, okay. But I love the house. So she couldn't figure out what she wanted to do with that, because she was like, she's getting a weird feeling. But she wanted to buy the house. It had original floors. It had an original fireplace. It just had all these unique things here in Florida. So so eventually we didn't buy it, though. She moved on to something else. And by the way, CC in the chat room, and for those who don't know, go to ParaXRadioNetwork.com and join us in the chat room if you're ever listen to some podcast. But so CC, I have not ever tried to sell an old funeral home. That would be really cool to try to do that. But I will tell you, before I became a real estate agent, I think I've mentioned this on the show before, I was working for a company. I actually had to get into an actual what's the word? That's the thing you put dead people in. When you go to a morgue, the thing that slides out and they put a dead body in there and slide it in.
The freezer.
Yeah, the freezer. I had to get into a freezer to mount a electrical probe, and the body was still there. To me, that was one of the creepiest things. And this is upstate New York. Oh, that hospital was the creepiest ones. I will tell you, it would make a good horror movie in this hospital. I'm telling you. Oh, but
no,
I'm sorry.
What? No, you're fine. So we're going to step sideways from the creepy shrine house. And let me read you some of these statistics and see if these sound like some of the things that you've kind of run into. So according to this, I mentioned that the report, the Halloween report, or what they call it, the official term for it is a haunted real estate report that comes out at Halloween from realtor.com. So they said, according to that, most people are willing to take a chance on a haunted house if they get a certain thing. The biggest thing people asked for was a 15% discount on the price of the home, or a larger kitchen or a better neighborhood. So I think that they're saying that they would settle for a haunted house if it had a larger kitchen, not that they're asking them to build a larger kitchen. And then also, out of those demographics, millennials at 17% were persuadable with a lower price tag. If the house was haunted, they would take a discount to live in a haunted house. However, 18% of millennials say they wouldn't require anything to be persuaded to buy a haunted house. And nearly a quarter of people aged 35 to 54 said that haunting doesn't affect them one way or the other. They buy it because they like it. So what do you think? Do those sound about right compared to what you've seen?
Actually, it's funny saying that. Absolutely. It's interesting because, like I said, when my buyers find out that I do a radio show about paranormal and weird stuff, they love it. They're like, oh, really? And they're jumping all over. I actually have some who jumped on, listened to our show in the past. It seems like the ones who are older, like I said, in the 30s and 40s and 50s, they're not so big into that, especially on the house side. Because they've now been out joke. I'll come in and I go, well, doesn't feel haunted to me. And I've had someone go, it better not be. And the other one's like, oh, yeah, I don't believe in that stuff. So that kind of sounds about right, because the millennials seem to be, and I do a lot of millennials because I do a lot of first-time home buyer programs. So I tend to get more younger groups. But occasionally I get an older one, an older couple. But I'm, if you listen to my show, we joke around a lot. And I joke around with my customers and stuff, and we, the stuff like, we'll see a big, walk-in closet, and I go, look, you could put a casket in here. And, some of them laugh, some of them look at me weird, and I'm like, oh, I better shut up.
You test the water with the joke, serious, let it go, yeah.
It's interesting you say that. I do see the millennials are far more accepting. And I wonder if that's because the paranormal shows, I mean, think about it. 2002, 2003, we started seeing more of these paranormal shows. If you think about kids who are 25 now, they grew up, with these shows on Sci-Fi and on History Channel and Discovery and all that. So to them, it's probably no big deal, being 25, 28, 30 years old. That's just like, oh, yeah, So I think I agree with that assessment.
All right, so I had to look it up. I wanted to see what a age range from. So technically, a millennial is anyone from 1981 to 1996. So they're 22 to 37-ish. I can see that's a bunch of first-time home buyers. Sure, yeah, definitely in that age bracket. And also, you're right. They grew up on those shows, and that was just no big deal to watch horror movies and live in houses. And yeah, so I could see that. All right. So some of the other things that they said. So 49% of people said that there is no price low enough. There is no kitchen large enough. There is no neighborhood safe enough to make them buy a haunted house.
I don't know about that. Because I can tell you right now, if you've got someone looking at a house and they're like, well, this, big old, I don't believe that. And here's why. You go to a house, say it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, 1,800 square foot, and go, oh, by the way, there's reports of strange, things in here. They're not sure. So they're discounting this to $75,000 when normally it'd be a $300,000 house. I can guarantee you, my mother would buy that house, and she's 85 years old Catholic. So it's just the sheer fact that it's really subjective. But people, and we've all talked, we've talked about, people have talked about it for years. It's like people like, they go into a house that they go haunted. People are like, oh, we've never seen anything. I mean, give you the case. What's that famous house? Oh my goodness.
You're talking about
they made a movie out of it.
Amityville?
Annabelle Horror. Yeah. The people who've lived there for years have said, we've never seen anything, ever. But there's always a report, so it's just, I don't know. I think anyone who, a good enough opportunity when it comes to making money, they would buy it, maybe live in it for 6 months, a year, and then flip it. If it's if it's cheap enough, but
Well, I also wonder. Okay, so this is a self-reported survey that they had on their site that people filled in. I'm thinking if people didn't believe in spirits or ghosts or whatever, they probably didn't fill this survey out. So there's probably a skewed result there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. They again, someone in the break in that chat room, Kate said, opens largest walk-in closet. There's plenty of room for all your skeletons. That's kind of funny.
There you go. You must have skeleton closet for sure.
Absolutely. One of the things I think is interesting is there's homes, especially out in more the country area, especially the older ones. There'll be homes with actually barrel plots on the homes, especially in the South. They don't do this too much in the North, but especially like Georgia, Florida, some in the northern parts of Florida, they will have homes that will have actual burial plots on the property, and they used to bury their relatives there. So, which is always an interesting. I haven't had a chance to show a house that's been sold, but they come up with the MLS once in a while. They call it old classic homes, original burial plots, and people love that kind of stuff.
I wonder if in the sale agreement does it say like, please remember to water and mow grandma's plot? Like, is that part of the thing? Like, you have to keep it up.
Actually, there is rules in different counties in Florida, especially with the older homes. There's certain historical homes. There's rules and regulations about how they have to keep up. Like there's a town there, it's called Fort Meade, and they have some really cool old 125-year-old homes, some a little bit older, 1890s, and they have all these rules and regulations. You can't change certain wood, you can't do this, you can't do that. You have to keep this up. They put it right there. It's kind of like a law because most of these homes, especially the older ones, are more in city. Because obviously 125 years ago, where that house was near the central area of the town. No one built houses 30 miles out from the city. 100 years ago, so you never get into the city. It'd take you all day. So, but yeah, those historical buildings, they like have certain rules and regulations about that kind of stuff. So, and they I don't know if one time years ago when I was a kid, I went to I had a stepsister who lived in Georgia, and she was renting a house, and we went and played in the woods. I would say about maybe half a mile into the woods, we found an old cemetery, an abandoned cemetery. So that was kind of, I've always like, and there's a park near us that has an old cemetery that's about 125, 150 years old. It's kind of cool. Those little tiny stones where you can barely read, the dates on them and stuff like that. I always find that fascinating. So
I think when I sell my house, I'm going to put a clause in the agreement that just says, please remember to water grandma, and just don't clarify that and just leave that like that in the seller's agreement and see if they notice. I feel like that's going to...
Oh, that would be funny. That would be... You get some traction on that one.
But I wonder if they'd actually, because, I mean, who honestly really reads that other than, okay, maybe the realtor might read it, but when you're buying a house, do you really read every line of those papers?
Me? No.
Yeah.
I just only certain things I read. Certain, if I see if it's sewer water, if it's septic, if it's that kind of thing, what the taxes are, how much I get paid. And there's some notes. Sometimes they call it realtor notes that the realtor notes don't get published to the public. So there's certain things you read in there, like, seller says this, or, certain things you got to, keep an eye, look at, legally from a certain point. But
Seller's
for the most part, all that other stuff, yeah. I don't.
I'm just going to put that in there. Seller's a real jackass who really wants to be a pain in the ass. It's going to be a sucky sale. Yeah.
Well, you can't quite say that in the MLS, but there's certain, when you're talking to them directly, believe it or not, there's certain words you look for, when you're talking to a listing agent and the agent says, well, this one's going to be a tough one. A little bit, they're a little bit picky. You got to be careful though, because one time the real estate laws are very strict on how, especially when it comes to what's the word I'm looking for? When you're being racist, sexist, racist, that kind of thing. And I actually had a seller. And I don't like the seller being there with me. Like, sometimes sellers will come in and they go, "Oh, this is my house," and they want to try to sell it themselves, and that's never a good thing. It just doesn't work. Well, he came out and he was like, "Well, I don't know if this is going to be the house for you," and I'm like, "Really?" And at this point, I know exactly what he means, because I have two young black couple, and I was like, "Okay." And I said, "Guys, there's some things about this house," and they're like, "Oh, okay." And I left out and I said, "I don't know how to tell you this, but unfortunately, and I'm going to have to report this, but to let you know, that seller does not want to sell to you." And they're like, "Why?" I go, "You're too dark." And I mean, that was, and they're like, "What?" And I go, "Yeah," he says, "this house is not for you." And at that point, I had to report that guy to the listing agent and told him, "You need to drop this customer as fast as you can." I said, because you're going to get yourself in a bit of trouble. Because what happens is, if it comes back to the selling agent or the buyer's agent, if I say, "Hey, guys, this is the wrong neighborhood for you," that's illegal. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, Jews. If I go, "Hey, there's a synagogue next to the corner over there. It's great for you guys," I can't say that. That's illegal. There's some things. So, which gets us into the point. Do you want to take a break now or hold off? What's your break schedule like?
Yeah, we're going to take a break in a second. I was waiting for you to take a breath.
Okay. Sorry about that. I get going.
It's all good. It's easy to get going when you don't got Eric, stepping on your mic. Hey, Eric, he's in the chat room, so I can say that. So we're going to take a real quick break. You're listening to Shadows Radio here on the Para X Radio Network. We'll be right back. Hang tight.
From Ghost Adventures, and you're listening to Para X Radio.
Hi, this is Hollywood Hunt Rider Marla Brooks, and you're listening to the Para X Radio Network.
But remember, we'll always see you in the shadows.
Paramount, 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 Paramount.
Welcome back to the Shadows Radio here on the PowerX Radio Network. I'm still Rebecca. Kara's still MIA, so instead my guest co-host tonight is the one and only James Riggs from Strange Things Radio here at the PowerX Radio Network on Friday nights. James, are you still there, or did you hang up on me?
Oh, I tried hanging up, but you have this thing on my phone. It won't let me.
I am an addicting person to talk to. No, I got nothing. So, whatever. It's, it's Monday. Nobody has anything better to do, so here we are.
There we go.
So we've been talking kind of about real estate and haunted locations and, talking about selling houses and who wants to buy a haunted house and all that kind of stuff. And I want to kind of talk about the legalities of it. So as I mentioned before, I found this haunted real estate report. And again, that is from realtor.com if you guys ever want to track that down. They do it every Halloween. But the one stat that kind of jumped out at me, and I kind of grabbed this and I ran with it, was that 17% of sellers admit they failed to tell buyers that a house was haunted during the buying process. And 10% of respondents actually said that their sale fell through because they didn't disclose that it was haunted. And so that kind of led me down this rabbit hole of do you actually have to say that it's haunted? And so some of the things that I found, obviously this law varies from state to state, but basically it puts the house in what they call a stigmatized status. Are you familiar with that term?
What do they call it?
Stigmatized?
Stigmatized. Yeah, I am here in Florida. You don't have to. Florida's a little bit liberal in its thinking. As far as real estate and stuff like that. Other states, I know California is pretty heavily, and as far as disclosures and that kind of scenario. And New York state also is pretty strong on that. I would say the laws in Florida, basically, it's really, they refer to as buyers beware. Because there are certain things you have to disclose, lead paint poisoning, flood zone type of scenario. But outside of that, you don't have to. Believe it or not, if a person kills himself, nope, don't have to disclose it. If a person dies, any kind of death, dismemberment, murder, any of that, a drug house, it doesn't have to be disclosed. And here's the other crazy part. If the house is being rented and the owner of the house is selling it but never lived in that house, you don't have to have any disclosures. It says, owner never lived in house, has no disclosure.
Interesting. So I found, again, like you said, California, they'd have to disclose stuff, but only within the last 3 years. So technically, if something happened 4 years ago, you're off the hook. Massachusetts, you don't have to declare. Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, Ohio, all do not have to declare. But New York, you do. Connecticut, you do. Anything that's happened. They said murder, suicides, criminal activity, or, quote, supposed deterrence to life in the home, which they consider hauntings, fall in that category. And then actually in 1991, there was a case of Stambaugh Ski versus Ackley, which is also known as the Ghostbusters case, where New York State declared that a seller must disclose to buyers that they think a house is haunted only if they've shared this opinion to the public at large. So if they've ever said out loud that my house is haunted, it has to go into the real estate agreement or into the listing. But if you kept your paranormal ghosty secrets to yourself, then you have no reason to declare it out loud. So I think that's kind of cool. So if you just don't post it on Facebook that your house is haunted, and you'll be fine, at least according to this ruling. So obviously you said Florida, you don't have to declare anything. Like I said, Pennsylvania the same way. You don't actually have to declare anything. But, I mean, there are some states that you actually have to list out haunted or, somebody died in this house or whatever. I just find that odd. Like, would you as a real estate agent have a problem showing a house if you knew that somebody died there, like by some kind of vicious, not necessarily like it passed away old age or sickness or something, because that happens everywhere. But like maybe, somebody hung themselves or something like that. Would that throw you off in your selling?
Oh, yeah. I would, that would be interesting. I would be honest. I would tell them right off the bat. I would tell them because the majority of my buyers are first-time home buyers. So they don't always understand what's going on, and I'm very careful about how things are worded, and going into a home and stuff like that. If I knew, in that scenario, I would tell them. I would say, hey, listen, this house has come up for sale. Unfortunately, it's also, it's been disclosed. One thing about my type of real estate agent is I don't always have to disclose everything to the buyer. I'm what they call a transactional broker, so I can learn things about the house that I don't necessarily have to tell the buyer. But I tend to tell the buyer everything. So I would just say, listen, I've learned that unfortunately this house had a gruesome murder in it, or a suicide, or something like that. If you believe in that kind of stuff, this may not be a house for you. But if it's something you don't believe in, go in there. I stay away from my personal feelings a lot of times when it comes to these type of homes. I'm cautious about that because I have my likes and dislikes, and I have to be careful because I may not like something, and they may think it's the best thing in since sliced bread. And the last thing I want to do is inject your own personal feelings on something that may not be the right thing. So you gotta be careful about that. I've stepped in it a few times. Definitely, weird. One time I walked in the house and I was like, oh, okay. And I started looking around and I'm like, and I actually said, boy, I don't know, this is kind of weird in here. And they're like, weird? Why? Why do you think that? I'm like, oh man, it's something I had explained why I felt this weird sensation into it. And then they started thinking, oh yeah, you're right. And next thing I know is I spent 10 minutes there not liking the house. Well, now you're wasting 10 minutes of time because if you're not going to like it, why are we hanging out there? It's like going to a car that you don't like the color of and talking about why you don't like the color. Well, let's just move on. We got other houses to see. And then it's funny you say that because I actually had a house down in Venice, Florida. It was a flipper house. The professional flippers came in and they flipped it. Nice house. But I had a weird feeling, but I kept my mouth shut. And the lady goes, I love this house. Oh, my goodness. And then she called me probably about a month later after she moved into it. She goes, James, she goes, I know you're into metaphysical stuff, and I go, yeah. She goes, do you know anyone who can stage my house? And I go, you need a staging? And she goes, yeah.
Whoops.
I need something that cleans this house because it's just the weird noises that don't make sense. And I'm like, yeah. So I got someone I knew, and they went down there, $75. And they came and they cleansed the house, and and every now and then I check in with them. Because everything seems to be fine. So I didn't know if it's just someone's just a new place, new feeling. But I also felt something weird. It was a 1940s house. So that's a lot of time for something to be happening. And it's an older neighborhood too. So you never know. And sometimes I think when they go and they flip homes, we've heard this, and you've heard this too, and probably in your investigations, where people start doing renovations, they start moving walls or pulling out floors and stuff like that. It pisses off some spirits.
Yeah,
so
definitely. Yeah, the renovation thing definitely does it. But you know what? I mean, it'll throw you off too. Is that my parents' house is a brand new construction. But they tore down a house to build my parents' house, and we got their leftover ghosts, which I thought was bizarre because my mom, they bought the lot. There was no house on it when they bought the lot. They put a house there, and then we come to find out, oh, there was a house there back in 17-something, and then it got torn down in the 1800s, and it became an empty field for a long time. And now there's my parents' house there. It's like we got their leftover ghosts. So the house doesn't necessarily need to be old to have leftover spirits running around.
A few years back, before I got into real estate, I owned an IT company and stuff. And one of my clients was a home builder, and so I was there helping out through the IT stuff. And one of the salespeople and I were talking. He goes, "Yeah, one of the model homes that we have right now." Because I will not sell in that model home. And they go, why? What's going on? And he goes, I don't care what time of day it is. Things are weird. Lights get turned on and off. Ceiling fans get turned off. I see magazines that are on the floor. I said, well, maybe it's just, the AC unit's not balanced right. He goes, no. These aren't just little pieces of paper. These are whole magazines that the magazines you put out for a model home, they're on the floor. He goes, I hear things all the time. He goes, I refuse to go in the model home now. So now that I kept going over there, really? But I couldn't experience anything. But yeah, there's even brand new homes, and this is a brand new home no one's lived in. But so it's definitely. And some of these, and like you said, some of these areas, Florida, that they'll take they'll take old pastures and stuff like that, and I don't doubt there was an old home on that pasture at one point, like you said, and you pay your parents' house, and wife, tearing it down and putting something new up there. The ghosts don't exactly know this new; they're still there.
Yeah,
they're in that location. So I find that quite interesting. I always thought it'd be kind of cool too. I've looked into it. Is to put a website up, say, hauntedhomesforsale.com or something, and literally try to find all the homes that are haunted, maybe certified, again, there's that great debate, how do you certify something that's haunted or whatever, but I don't know, that would be kind of an interesting, field to see how many, hits you get and, see how many people really would plunk down their money to buy a truly haunted, haunted house that's been
well, if
surveyed.
you are interested, realestate.com actually has a filter called haunted. In their listings, apparently, yeah. Just real quickly, I didn't actually pull it up, so I don't know what it pulls up, but yeah. It says, we cannot officially say these homes are haunted, but they're sure creepy. Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. I would, that would be an interesting business idea for, again, one of the more, I wouldn't say famous, the famous people on these different TV shows, that one of them doesn't put together some kind of certification. And that's the question, Rebecca, because I don't really investigate too much, really at all. And I know there's tons of investigators and, stuff like that. Is there a group, I know there's TAPs and all that, but is there groups that go out and say, hey, we've investigated this home and we're certifying that this is not haunted, or it's just anything like that going on?
Okay, it's pretty funny that you actually say that, because when I was down in St. Augustine, and I walked into a store, and it was like an old building that, they'd put like a convenience store into, and right and hanging by the door was a sign that said, this building is certified haunted by XYZ Ghost Hunting Group. And I took a picture of it, and I died laughing. I'm like, how the hell can you certify something as haunted? And you can't even tell me what makes a ghost stay in one spot. It wasn't a ghost that was traveling through, was it? So, yes, there are people that actually do that. I don't do that. I find that ridiculous. But apparently there are people that do that.
I guess it's all about the ambience, right? If you got a house that's, has weird things, and you have, professional people come in and go, yep, this is we feel. I don't know.
You can have somebody come in and say, you can definitely have a group come in and say, yes, they found something, but I don't know if I would go as far as to say, oh, it's certified, I find it bizarre. But in case you were wondering, there's also this website called diedinhouse.com, where you can actually pay them to run a report, and they'll check all the public records for your home or your location. And they actually pull up a report, and they'll tell you if there was ever a fire, a death, a property, a sale, all that kind of stuff in that house. Any newspaper clippings that mention your home address show up as well, which I thought was really cool for somebody who's looking for a house. Maybe you might want to run the addresses through there if you're curious about haunted house.
Wow. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
The only problem is they charge you $11.99 per search, so maybe not so much the doing it for fun, but unless you got some cash to burn. But if you're in the market for a house and you're worried about moving into a haunted house, I guess that's a good place to start.
Yeah, it's interesting. I tell you,
I find that
that's
I kind of want to buy a bunch of searches now and just start looking through and see all these haunted houses for sale. But actually, Kat in the chat room had a really good point. She said, "How can you could you ever be sued for misrepresenting a house as haunted if you can never prove that it was?" And then she said she threw a quote in there and said, "Hey, it wasn't haunted until you moved in. It must be the spirits don't like you and moved out." So yeah, I guess that's a good point. We can't really prove that ghosts are a thing, kind of like scientifically saying, like, yes, this is irrefutably yes or no haunting. How can we, say, oh, yeah, it's definitely a haunted house, or no, it wasn't. Or, maybe somebody says, oh, I'm breaking the sale because it's haunted. And you can say, well, no, it wasn't haunted when I lived there. You just, must have brought them with you or something.
Well, yeah, and then that's the legality of it. Is you can't. That's kind of why you don't have to disclose it in Florida, because there's no real evidence of it being true. And this is, even if it, like I sold you a house that had bad faulty wiring in it, you can't actually sue the agent, the buyer's agent. There's the rules, that's why the whole buyer beware scenario of it. But the problem is that's why I have to be careful about what I talk. If I say, oh yeah, if you buy this home, it's going to go up $20,000 next year, and it doesn't, and I wrote it in an email or a text to you. At that point, you can use. I falsely sold you a piece of property that, gave you gave you financial advice that didn't come true. Yes, you could sue me for that. But the death part, the ghost part, and all that stuff, legally you can't, because there's no way to prove an action out. Well, this is the word for it. Action, proving the action of it.
Yeah.
So there's no proof of it, and so there's no proof. There's no legality of it. So.
But people have broken the sale. I mean, there are records of people who have backed out of sales because they claim that the property was haunted, or they. So is there actually okay? So let's leave ghosts aside. So let's say I buy a house today. Can I back out of the sale after closing? Like, is there a wiggle room in that?
Nope.
So once closing happens, that's it.
So what happens is, that's why there's a 30-day, usually a 30 to 40-day close. Mm-hmm. First thing you do is when you buy a house, you have a 10 or 12-day inspection period.
Yep.
You go through the inspection. If anything happens in that inspection period, then you can back out of the contract and get your escrow back. You're okay. Then if you can't get it financed, you can back out because of not being able to get it financed, or it doesn't appraise for the price you're trying to buy it for. But out of those, if you just come up 10 days before or 5 days before you close, and you go, no, I don't want to buy it. I'm sorry, but you're out of your escrow. And that's happened to me a couple times, and people have lost their escrows. But once you sign those papers and those closing papers, you own that house. There's no 24-hour. See, that's why usually there's a law in place that's 3 days before you close on a house, they send you this paperwork. It's your disclosure paperwork. You have to wet sign it. In other words, you have to physically sign it with a pen. You can't digitally sign it. And then that comes back, and then you go to closing table. You re-sign all these papers. Mm-hmm. Right? Once you sign those papers, you are legal owner of that house. You can't go, well, I don't want this house now. It's yours.
Damn, you didn't tell me you weren't taking Grandma's ghost with you.
I'm sorry, but I what you just said.
I said you didn't tell me you weren't taking Grandma's ghost with you.
I have the house I closed tonight. People left a whole bunch of stuff there. They texted me and said, "Can you tell the people to come get some of their crap?" I swear to God, I've had people leave. Sold homes as is, the way it is. Nothing's being moved out. And I sold a house in Lakeland, Florida, and they were hunters, and they left all their hunting, like all their trophies,
like
all the
taxidermy
trophies,
and stuff?
All their, like, they had a couple deer, a boar's head, what else do they have? Antelope, antelope head, and like all this hunting stuff, and they're just like, whatever, take it. Or like, and the people are like, we don't want all this dead stuff in our house. I'm like, throw it out, give it away. I don't know.
And you can sell that stuff for some good money. They could make their closing costs back, maybe.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty thing about my thing. For those who buy homes through my project and stuff like that, we try to get the closing costs taken care of. I get the closing costs paid by the seller. So most of my people who buy homes don't spend more than $2,500 to buy a house. So that's kind of the programs we do. But yeah, they can make some money coming back out. Some of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's I read recently someone was doing they were getting ready to put a house for sale, and they were doing a renovation, and they actually found an old Ouija board in the walls.
Nice.
And they got a hold of, I don't know if some people know who Robert Munch is. I never say his Robert's last name right. But
Munch.
they sent him the board, and the board was like 1890s board. Had been sitting in the walls that long.
That's awesome. Yeah, Bob Murch is a great he's an excellent resource for that kind of thing, but I couldn't imagine opening up a wall. We opened up a wall and found a bunch of trash. That was all we found. Not even good trash, like Hershey bar wrappers.
My mom and my stepfather owned a house in Tampa, and it was 1933, and they had built it, and somehow the middle of the house had a spare room, and it was right behind the fireplace, and the door that was being used to get into this little 5x5 room. But what they did is they actually put a for a pantry, but a bookshelf in that slot, and was using it to put groceries on. And I was in the attic, and I was running a TV. I was actually running a telephone line from where the place was, and I looked down there with a flashlight, and there was a 5x5 room with a chair in it. And I went down, and I told my stepfather, I go, do you know there's a room behind this door? And he's like, that's not a door. That's where you put I go, no, this is, and he broke it out and found a 5x5 room. That there was an empty chair there, and he had owned the house since the 60s, and this was in like an 85, and he never knew it was there. It was the weirdest thing. But that house,
was it red? Was it painted red?
No. But that house is haunted. You can talk to my mom. She's an 85-year-old Catholic, and she had 3 different priests come out to that house. That house was haunted. I don't care what people. It's weird. The weirdest house. Noises, the strange things going on in that house. That's kind of how I got into liking paranormal and stuff like that, just because that house was weird.
Cool. All right. Well, I got to cut you off because we are out of time, so we got to wrap this up and say goodnight. So
already?
Yeah. Well, when you only do an hour, it flies. What can I say? So,
very true.
Yeah. So if you guys want to catch James, obviously he is on the Strange Things Radio at 10 to midnight on Fridays, here on the Para X Radio Network, and you can catch their show. You all right over there? You having a hurricane blow through? What was that? All right. So, thank you, James. I hope you had fun, and we appreciate all your insights.
I did. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, and I look forward to coming back on again if anyone wants me on.
All right. I'll see what we can do. We'll have to tie Kara down again for another week. But as always, I am Rebecca, and on behalf of the ever-missing Kara, we will see you guys in the shadows.